Chapter 24. They have snatched her smile. The day my parents flew to Birmingham, I was moved out of intensive care and into room 4, ward 519, which had windows, so I could look out and see England for the first time. "Where are the mountains?" I asked. It was misty and rainy, so I thought maybe they were hidden. I didn't know then that this was a land of little sun. All I could see were houses and streets. The houses were red brick and all looked exactly the same. Everything looked very calm and organized, and it was odd to see people's lives going on as if nothing had happened. Dr. Javid told me my parents were coming and tilted my bed so that I was sitting up to greet them when they arrived. I was so excited. In the 16 days since that morning when I had run out of our house in Mingora shouting goodbye, I had been in 4 hospitals and traveled thousands of miles. It felt like 16 years. Then the door opened and there were the familiar voices saying Johnny and Pishu, and they were there, kissing my hands as they were frightened to touch me. I couldn't control myself and wept as loudly as I could. All that time alone in hospital I hadn't cried even when I had all those injections in my neck or the staples removed from my head. But now I could not stop. My father and mother were also weeping. It was as if all the weight had been lifted from my heart. I felt that everything would be fine now. I was even happy to see my brother Kushal, as I needed someone to fight with. "We missed you, Malala," said my brothers, though they were soon more interested in all the teddies and gifts. And Kushal and I were soon fighting again when he took my laptop to play games on. I was shocked by my parents' appearance. They were tired from the long flight from Pakistan, but that wasn't all. They looked older and I could see they both had gray hairs. They tried to hide it, but I could see they were also disturbed by how I looked. Before they came in, Dr. Javid had warned them, "The girl you will see is only 10% recovered, there is still 90% to go." But they had no idea that half my face was not working and that I couldn't smile. My left eye bulged, half my hair was gone and my mouth tilted to one side as if it had been pulled down, so when I tried to smile it looked more like a grimace. It was as if my brain had forgotten it had a left face. I also couldn't hear from one side, and I spoke in baby language as if I was a small child. My parents were put in a hostel in the university among all the students. The people in charge of the hospital thought it might be difficult for them to stay at the hospital because they would be besieged by journalists, and they wanted to protect us at this critical stage in my recovery. My parents had very little with them except the clothes they were wearing and what Shiza's mother Sonia had given them, because when they left SWAT on 9th of October they had no idea they wouldn't be going back. When they returned to the hostel room, they cried like children. I had always been such a happy child. My father would boast to people about my heavenly smile and heavenly laughter. Now he lamented to my mother, "That beautiful symmetrical face, that bright shining face has gone. She has lost her smile and laughter. The Taliban are very cruel, they have snatched her smile," he added. "You can give someone eyes or lungs but you cannot restore their smile." The problem was a facial nerve. The doctors were not sure at that point if it was damaged and might repair itself, or if it was cut. I reassured my mother that it didn't matter to me if my face was not symmetrical. Me, who had always cared about my appearance, how my hair looked. But when you see death, things change. "It doesn't matter if I can't smile or blink properly," I told her, "I'm still me, Malala. The important thing is God has given me my life." Yet every time they came to the hospital and I laughed or tried to smile, my mother's face would darken as if a shadow had crossed it. It was like a reverse mirror, when there was laughter on my face there was distress on my mother's. My father would look towards my mother, who had this big question in her eyes: why was Malala like this? The girl she had brought into the world and for 15 years had been smiling. One day my father asked her, "Pikai, tell me truthfully. What do you think, is it my fault?" "No, Kaista," she replied. "You didn't send Malala out thieving or killing or to commit crimes. It was a noble cause." Even so, my father worried that in future every time I smiled it would be a reminder of the shooting. That was not the only way they found me changed. Back in SWAT I used to be a very fragile and sensitive child who would cry at the slightest thing, but in hospital in Birmingham even when I was in terrible pain I did not complain. The hospital refused to allow other visitors even though they were inundated by requests, as they wanted me to be able to concentrate on my rehabilitation in private. 4 days after my parents arrived, a group of politicians came to the hospital from the 3 countries that had helped me: Rahman Malik, Pakistan's Interior Minister, William Hague, the British Foreign Minister, and Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed, Foreign Minister of the UAE. They were not allowed to see me but were briefed by doctors and met my father. He was upset by the minister's visit because Rahman Malik said to him, "Tell Malala she should give a smile to the nation." He did not know that that was the one thing I could not do. Rahman Malik had revealed that my attacker was a Talib called Atullah Khan, who he said had been arrested in 2009 during the military operation in Swat but freed after 3 months. There were media reports that he had done a physics degree at Jahanzeb College. Malik claimed the plan to shoot me was hatched in Afghanistan. He said he had put a $1 million bounty on the head of Atullah and promised they would find him. We doubted that, as no one has ever been caught, not the killer of Benazir Bhutto, not whoever was behind the plane crash that killed General Zia, not the assassin of our first Prime Minister, Liaquat Ali Khan. Only 2 people had been arrested after my shooting: our poor dear driver Usman Baijan and the school accountant, who had taken the call from Usman Baijan to say what had happened. He was released after a few days, but Usman Baijan was still in army custody as they said they would need him to identify people. We were very upset about that. Why had they arrested Usman Baijan and not Atullah? The United Nations announced they were designating 10th of November, 1 month and a day after the shooting, Malala Day. I didn't pay much attention as I was preparing for a big operation the following day to repair my facial nerve. The doctors had done tests with electrical impulses and it had not responded, so they concluded it was cut, and they needed to operate soon or my face would remain paralyzed. The hospital had been giving regular updates to journalists about how I was doing but did not tell them about this to keep it private. I was taken into theater on 11th of November for a surgeon called Richard Irving to carry out the operation. He had explained to me that this nerve controlled the side of my face, and its job was to open and close my left eye, move my nose, raise my left eyebrow and make me smile. Repairing the nerve was such delicate work that it took 8.5 hours. The surgeon first cleared my ear canal of scar tissue and bone fragments and discovered that my left eardrum was damaged. Then he followed the facial nerve from the temporal bone where it enters the skull all the way to its exit, and on the way removed many more fragments of bone which had been restricting my jaw movement. He found 2 centimeters of my nerve completely missing where it leaves the skull and rerouted it in front of my ear from its normal passage behind the ear, to make up for the gap. The operation went well, though it was a 3-month wait before the left side of my face started working bit by bit. I had to do facial exercises every day in front of my small mirror. Mr. Irving told me that after 6 months the nerve would start working, though I would never be completely the same. To my delight I could soon smile and wink my eye, and week by week my parents saw more movement coming into my face. Though it was my face, I could see it was my parents who were happiest to have it back. Afterwards Mr. Irving said it was the best outcome he had seen in 20 years of facial nerve surgery, and it was 86% recovered. The other good result was that finally my headaches lifted and I started reading again. I began with The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, one of a pile of books sent to me by Gordon Brown. I loved reading about Dorothy and how even though she was trying to get back home she stopped and helped those in need like the Cowardly Lion and the Rusty Tin Man. She had to overcome a lot of obstacles to get where she was going, and I thought if you want to achieve a goal, there will be hurdles in your way but you must continue. I was so excited by the book that I read it quickly and afterwards told my father all about it. He was very happy because he thought if I could memorize and narrate such detail then my memory must be fine. I knew my parents were worried about my memory as I told them I didn't remember anything about the shooting and kept forgetting the names of my friends. They weren't very subtle. One day my father asked, "Malala, can you sing us some Pashto Tapi?" I sang a verse we liked: "When you start your journey from the end of a snake's tail, you will end up on its head in an ocean of poison." To us that referred to how the authorities in Pakistan had initially used the militants and now were in a mess of their own making. Then I said, actually there's a tapa I want to rewrite. My father looked intrigued. Tapi are the centuries-old collected wisdom of our society, you don't change them. Which one? He asked. This one, I said. If the men cannot win the battle, O my country, then the women will come forth and win you an honor. I wanted to change it too. Whether the men are winning or losing the battle, O my country, the women are coming and the women will win you an honor. He laughed and repeated the story to everyone, as he always does. I worked hard in the gym and with the physiotherapist to get my arms and legs working properly again and was rewarded on 6th of December with my first trip out of the hospital. I told Emma that I loved nature, so she arranged for 2 staff to take me and my mother on an outing to the Birmingham Botanical Gardens, not far from the hospital. They didn't let my father come as they thought he would be recognized, having been in the media a lot. Even so, I was very happy, my first time back in the outside world, seeing Birmingham and England. They told me to sit in the back of the car in the middle, not next to a window, which was annoying as I wanted to see everything in this new country. I didn't realize they were trying to protect my head from any bump. When we entered the gardens and I saw all the green plants and trees, it was a powerful reminder of home. I kept saying, this one is in my valley, and we also have this one. I am very proud of the beautiful plants of my valley. It was odd seeing all the other visitors, for whom it was just a normal day out. I felt like Dorothy at the end of her journey. My mother was so excited she called my father. For the first time I am happy, she said. But it was ice cold, and so we went into the cafe and had delicious tea and cakes, something called a cream tea. 2 days after that I had my first visitor from outside the family, the President of Pakistan, Asif Zardari. The hospital did not want him to come as they knew it would mean a media frenzy, but it was difficult for my father to refuse. Not only was Mr. Zardari our head of state, but he had said the government would pay all my medical bills, which would end up being around £200,000. They had also rented an apartment for my parents in the center of Birmingham, so they could move out of the hostel. The visit was on Saturday 8th of December, and the whole thing was like something out of a James Bond movie. There were a lot of journalists gathered outside from early on, who naturally assumed the president would be brought to me in the hospital. Instead, I was wrapped up in a big purple parka with a hood, taken down through the staff entrance and driven to the hospital offices. We drove right past journalists and photographers, some of whom were up in trees, and they did not even notice. Then I sat and waited in an office, playing a game called Elf Bowling on the computer and beating my brother Atal even though it was the first time I had played it. When Zardari and his party arrived in 2 cars, they were brought in through the back. He came with about 10 people including his chief of staff, his military secretary and the Pakistan High Commissioner in London, who had taken over from Dr. Fiona as my official guardian in the UK till my parents arrived. The president was first briefed by doctors not to mention my face. Then he came in to see me with his youngest daughter Asifa, who is a few years older than me. They brought me a bouquet of flowers. He touched my head, which is our tradition, but my father was worried as I had nothing but skin, no bone to protect my brain, and my head beneath the shawl was concave. Afterwards the president sat with my father, who told him that we were fortunate I had been brought to the UK. She might have survived in Pakistan, but she wouldn't have had the rehabilitation and would have been disfigured, he said. Now her smile will return. Mr. Zardari told the High Commissioner to give my father a post as education attaché, so he would have a salary to live on and a diplomatic passport, so he would not need to seek asylum to stay in the UK. My father was relieved as he was wondering how he would pay for things. Gordon Brown, in his UN role, had also asked him to be his advisor, an unpaid position, and the president said that was fine, he could be both. After the meeting, Mr. Zardari described me to the media as a remarkable girl and a credit to Pakistan. But still not everyone in Pakistan was so positive. Though my father had tried to keep it from me, I knew some people were saying he had shot me, or that I wasn't shot at all, and we had staged it so we could live overseas. The new year of 2013 was a happy one when I was discharged from hospital in early January, finally to live with my family again. The Pakistan High Commission had rented 2 serviced apartments for us in a building in a modern square in the center of Birmingham. The apartments were on the 10th floor, which was higher than any of us had ever been before. I teased my mother, as after the earthquake when we were in a 3-story building she said she would never again live in an apartment block. My father told me that when they arrived she had been so scared that she had said, "I will die in this lift." We were so happy to be a family again. My brother Kushal was as annoying as always. The boys were bored, cooped up waiting for me to recover, away from school and their friends, though Atal was excited by everything new. I quickly realized I could treat them how I liked and I wouldn't get told off. It was a cold winter, and as I watched the snow falling outside through the big glass windows I wished I could run around and chase the snowflakes like we used to back home. Sometimes we went for walks to build up my strength, though I tired easily. In the square was a fountain and a Costa coffee bar with glass walls through which you could see men and women chatting and mixing in a way that would be unthinkable in Swat. The apartment was just off Broad Street, a famous road of shops, nightclubs and strip bars. We went to the shops, though I still did not like shopping. At nights our eyes were all out on stalks at the skimpy clothes that women wore, tiny shorts almost like knickers and bare legs on the highest heels even in the middle of winter. My mother was so horrified that she cried, "Garkashoma! I'm drowning!" and begged my father, "Please take me to Dubai. I can't live here." Later we laughed about it. "Are their legs made of iron, so they don't feel cold?" asked my mother. We were warned not to be out late on Broad Street on weekend nights as it could be dangerous. This made us laugh. How could it be unsafe compared to where we had come from? Were there Taliban beheading people? I didn't tell my parents, but I flinched if an Asian-looking man came close. I thought everyone had a gun. Once a week I Skyped my friends back in Mingora, and they told me they were still keeping a seat in class for me. The teacher had brought to class my Pakistan Studies exam from that day, the day of the shooting. I had got 75 out of 75, but as I never did the others, Malka-e-Noor got first in class. Though I had been getting some schooling at the hospital, I worried that I was falling behind. Now the competition was between Malka-e-Noor and Maniba. "It's boring without you to compete with," Malka-e-Noor told me. I was getting stronger every day, but my surgery wasn't over. I still had the top of my skull missing. The doctors were also concerned about my hearing. When I went for walks I could not understand the words of my mother and father in a crowd. And inside my ear was a tinny noise which only I could hear. On Saturday 2nd of February I was back in K to be operated on, this time by a woman. Her name was Anwen White. First she removed the skull bone from my tummy, but after looking at it decided not to put it back as it had not kept well and there was a risk of infection. Instead, she did something called a titanium angioplasty. I now know lots of medical terms, and fitted a specially molded titanium plate in my head with 8 screws to do the job of a skull and protect my brain. While I was in surgery, Mr. Irving, the surgeon who had repaired my nerve, also had a solution for my damaged left eardrum. He put a small electronic device called a cochlear implant inside my head near the ear and told me that in a month it would fit the external part on my head, and then I should be able to hear. I was in theater 5 hours and I'd had 3 operations, but I didn't feel like I'd had major surgery and was back in the apartment within 5 days. A few weeks later, when the receiver was fitted behind my ear, my left ear heard beep beep for the first time. To start with, everything was like a robot sound, but soon it was getting better and better. We human beings don't realize how great God is. He has given us an extraordinary brain and a sensitive, loving heart. He has blessed us with 2 lips to talk and express our feelings, 2 eyes which see a world of colors and beauty, 2 feet which walk on the road of life, 2 hands to work for us, a nose which smells the beauty of fragrance, and 2 ears to hear the words of love. As I found with my ear, no one knows how much power they have in their each and every organ until they lose one. I thank Allah for the hard-working doctors, for my recovery and for sending us to this world where we may struggle for our survival. Some people choose good ways and some choose bad ways. One person's bullet hit me. It swelled my brain, stole my hearing and cut the nerve of the left side of my face in the space of a second. And after that 1 second there were millions of people praying for my life and talented doctors who gave me my own body back. I was a good girl. In my heart I had only the desire to help people. It wasn't about the awards or the money. I always prayed to God, I want to help people and please help me to do that. A Talib fires 3 shots at point-blank range at 3 girls in a van and doesn't kill any of them. This seems an unlikely story, and people say I have made a miraculous recovery. My friend Shazia, who was hit twice, was offered a scholarship at Atlantic College in Wales, so has also come to the UK for schooling, and I hope Kainat will too. I know God stopped me from going to the grave. It feels like this life is a second life. People prayed to God to spare me, and I was spared for a reason, to use my life for helping people. When people talk about the way I was shot and what happened, I think it's the story of Malala, a girl shot by the Taliban. I don't feel it's a story about me at all.